A strange melody drifted through the forest, played on an instrument none of them recognized. At first I thought it was wind. The trail cut through a shallow ravine where air pooled and moved strangely, and the sound rose and fell with the same uneven patience as breathing. But wind didn't repeat itself that way. This did. A phrase, then a pause. 3 notes held too long, followed by something that bent sharp at the end, as if the sound itself had flinched. We stopped without agreeing to. Our boots sank into damp needles, releasing the smell of cold earth and resin. The temperature had dropped as the sun slid behind the ridge, the light thinning into a bluish haze that made distances hard to judge. Trees stood closer together here, their trunks dark, their upper branches dissolving into shadow. "Do you hear that?" Lena asked. She was standing slightly behind me, fingers hooked into the strap of her pack. Her voice sounded smaller than it had an hour earlier, like the forest had already learned how to take pieces of it away. "I hear it," I said, "but I don't know what it is." Jonah didn't answer. He turned his head, eyes unfocused, as if he were listening for something beneath the melody instead of to it. Jonah was the one who knew instruments, strings, reeds, things with breath and tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. "That's not wind," he said, "and it's not anything I've heard before." The melody drifted again, closer now, or maybe clearer. It slid between the trees without echo, as if the forest were swallowing the sound and handing it to us piece by piece. I tried to pick out the source, but it didn't come from any one direction. It felt placed, set into the air around us. We stood there too long. I know that now. Silence would have been easier. The melody invited attention without asking permission, and every second we listened, it felt like something subtle tightened. The way a room feels different once you realize you're not alone in it. "We should keep moving," I said. No one argued, which should have been my first warning. The trail sloped downward, and the light dimmed faster than it should have. Cold crept up through the soles of my boots. My breath fogged faintly, though it hadn't earlier. With each step, the melody adjusted, not following exactly, but aligning, shifting its tempo to match our pace. When we slowed, it stretched. When we hurried, the notes crowded closer together, impatient. "It's reacting," Lena whispered. Jonah stopped again. "No," he said. "It's anticipating." That was when I noticed the gaps. Between the notes, there were spaces that felt wrong, too deep, too deliberate. They weren't rests. They were absences shaped like something listening back. The forest had gone quiet around the sound. No insects, no distant bird calls. Even our movement seemed dulled. The crunch of needles softened, as if the ground were absorbing it on purpose. Shadows pooled between the trunks, thickening as the melody grew more complex. What had started as a simple, almost mournful tune now folded in on itself, layering notes that didn't belong together. Some were too low to be played on anything I could imagine. Others were sharp enough to make my teeth ache. Jonah's face had gone pale. He rubbed his hands together as if warming them, though his breath was steady. "It's using intervals that shouldn't resolve," he said. "They just hang there." The melody dipped suddenly, and something in my chest followed it. A pressure behind my ribs, like a held breath I hadn't realized was mine. I staggered, grabbing the trunk of a nearby tree. The bark was colder than it should have been, almost wet. Lena gasped. "Did you feel that?" I nodded. Words felt like too much effort. Ahead, the trail opened into a small clearing. Snow lingered there in thin, dirty patches, though it was late spring. The trees formed a rough circle, their branches interlaced overhead, blocking what little light remained. In the center stood nothing at all, just a stretch of flattened earth, darker than the surrounding ground, as if something had been resting there for a very long time. The melody stopped. The sudden silence was worse. My ears rang. The absence pressed down, heavy and expectant. I had the irrational urge to apologize, though I didn't know for what. Then the sound began again. It wasn't drifting anymore. It was coming from inside the clearing. The instrument revealed itself slowly, not visually, but through sensation. a vibration underfoot, a tremor in the air that raised the hairs on my arms. The melody now carried texture, a rasp, a wetness, the sense of something being drawn across something else with immense care. "There's no one there," Lena said, her voice breaking. "There's nothing there." Jonah took a step forward despite himself. His eyes were unfocused again, pupils wide. "I think," he said slowly, "that it's not being played." The melody swelled, and with it came understanding. Not complete, not clean, but enough to hurt. The notes weren't produced by breath or strings or hands. They were produced by tension, by the slow, patient adjustment of something vast beneath the forest floor. Roots shifting, stone grinding against itself. The sound of pressure being released in precise, measured ways. It wasn't music meant for us. We were just finally close enough to hear it. The melody began to repeat, but altered. Now it echoed things I recognized. The cadence of Jonah's voice when he laughed, the hitch in Lena's breathing when she was afraid. Between the notes, I heard my own pulse, stretched and warped, turned into rhythm. "Don't listen," I said, though I couldn't tell who I was talking to. Lena clamped her hands over her ears and screamed. The sound came out wrong, flattened, thinned, as if the forest had learned how to edit it. Jonah dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "It knows us," he said. "It's learning us." The ground in the clearing shifted. Not opening, not breaking, adjusting. The melody deepened, resolving at last into something almost satisfied. I understood then what the clearing was. Not a stage, not an altar, but a mouth that had learned patience. The last thing the melody took from us was our sense of time. When I stumbled back onto the trail, dawn was breaking. The forest sounded normal again. Birds tentative, wind cautious. My throat ached from screaming, though I didn't remember doing it. My pack was lighter, too light. Jonah and Lena were gone. In the center of the clearing, the ground was smooth and undisturbed, as if nothing had ever stood there at all. Except for one thing. A faint vibration beneath my feet, steady and low, like a heartbeat. I hear the melody now even when I'm far from the woods. It slips into other sounds. Traffic, wind through buildings, the hum of appliances. It's practicing, refining. The forest wasn't playing music. It was tuning itself. And we were never the audience. We were the instrument. They discovered a trail of stones leading away from their campsite, arranged in the shape of a body. I woke to the sound of Mark swearing softly. It took a moment to surface from sleep. The forest was pale with early light, the kind that has no warmth yet, just a thin gray-blue seepage between trunks. My sleeping bag crackled when I shifted. The air inside the tent felt stale, cold pressing through the fabric like damp fingers. "What?" I said. "Just, come look," he replied. His voice had that tight edge that meant he was trying not to wake anyone else, which only made my stomach sink faster. I crawled out, boots half-laced, breath fogging. The campsite lay in that strange, suspended quiet that exists just before birds decide it's safe to start again. Our fire pit was a ring of white ash. The trees around us stood motionless, their bark dark with moisture, their branches holding last night's mist. Lena was already up, wrapped in her jacket, arms crossed. She wasn't looking at Mark. She was looking past him. "Don't walk into it," she said. That was when I saw the stones. They started just beyond the edge of the firelight's reach, where the ground dipped slightly and the leaf litter thinned. Smooth river stones, pale against the dark soil, placed end to end in a long, narrow line. At first I thought it was some kind of marker trail until my eyes followed the shape. Ahead, shoulders, arms laid slightly away from the body, a torso tapering into legs, feet pointed toward the trees. Life-sized, perfectly proportioned. "Jesus," I whispered. I hadn't noticed the cold until then, but it seemed to deepen all at once, creeping up through the soles of my boots. The stones looked wet, though there hadn't been rain. A faint mineral smell hung in the air, sharp and clean, like the edge of a riverbank. "Did one of you do this?" Mark asked, though he didn't look at either of us. No, Lena said immediately. Don't even joke about that. I shook my head. My mouth felt dry. I didn't hear anything last night. None of us had. And that was the problem. The stones led away from the campsite in a slow, deliberate path, the body shape dissolving into a simple line after the feet. It threaded between trees, disappearing into a denser part of the forest where the undergrowth grew thick and shadowed. Maybe it's some kind of trail art, Mark said. Hikers do weird stuff. While we were sleeping? Lena asked. Mark didn't answer. We stood there too long, the three of us listening to nothing. The forest felt wrong in a way that was hard to pin down. Not threatening, not overtly hostile. Just attentive, as if it were waiting to see what we'd do. We should follow it, Mark said finally. Lena let out a short, humorless laugh. Absolutely not. If we don't, we'll just keep thinking about it, he said. I will, at least. He looked at me, searching for backup. I hesitated, then nodded, against my better judgment. Curiosity had already dug its hooks in. The idea of turning our backs on it felt worse somehow, like leaving a sentence unfinished. We didn't pack up. Just grabbed jackets, water, and a flashlight, though the light was growing stronger by the minute. Up close, the stones were colder than the ground around them. I crouched near the head and brushed my fingers against one. It was smooth, almost warm from my touch, and oddly comforting in its familiarity. River stone. Ordinary. That ordinariness scared me more than anything. We followed the line into the trees. The forest closed around us quickly, the air dimming, the temperature dropping another degree or two. Our footsteps sounded too loud, snapping twigs, scuffing dirt. The stones continued at a steady pace, never wavering, never bunching or spreading, as if whoever placed them had measured each step. Do you feel like it's quieter? Lena murmured. I did. The birds had stopped again. Even the wind seemed to move only above us, stirring the canopy without touching the forest floor. After 10 minutes, the trail curved. The stones grew more spaced out, the path less certain. My chest tightened with the irrational fear that if we lost sight of them, something irreversible would happen. Then we came to the second shape. Another body, smaller this time, laid out beside the trail. The stones here were darker, rougher, their edges biting into the soil. The arms were bent at odd angles, one leg twisted slightly inward. Lena made a sound I'd never heard from her before, thin, involuntary. This one's wrong, she said. I knew what she meant. The proportions were off. The head too narrow. The spine subtly curved, like someone trying not to be seen. Mark swallowed. Maybe they're different people. Or the same one, I said before I could stop myself. No one replied. The trail continued, and with it, the sense that the forest was closing ranks behind us. The light thinned, filtered through branches that seemed to lean closer together the farther we walked. My jacket brushed bark that felt damp and slick, leaving cold smears on the fabric. The third shape was barely a body at all, just a suggestion. Stones loosely arranged, the outline collapsing in places, as if the ground itself had shifted. That's enough, Lena said. We're going back. We turned. The stones behind us were gone. Not scattered. Not disturbed. Simply not there. Just bare earth, leaves, and roots, as undisturbed as if no one had ever walked there at all. Mark spun in a slow circle. That's not possible. I felt dizzy, a hollow sensation opening behind my eyes. We didn't take that long. The forest didn't argue. It just stood there, silent and immense. We moved quickly then, not running but close. Every snapped twig sounded like it came from just behind us. My breath rasped in my ears. I kept expecting to feel a hand on my shoulder, or worse, the absence of one where it should have been. The campsite appeared suddenly, the trees thinning, light breaking through. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. But something was wrong. Our tents stood exactly where we'd left them. The fire pit was unchanged. Our packs lay in the same careless pile. And beyond them, arranged at the edge of the clearing, were 3 new shapes made of stone. They were larger, more precise. I recognized my own outline immediately, the slight curve of my spine, the way my right foot angled outward. Mark's was beside it, broad-shouldered, rigid. Lena's lay a little apart, arms drawn closer to the body. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Lena whispered, "Why are they facing the trees?" I followed her gaze. The stone bodies weren't pointing toward our tents. They were oriented outward, toward the forest, as if watching, as if waiting. The wind moved then, finally reaching the clearing. It passed through the trees with a low, collective sigh, and the stones clicked softly against one another, settling. Behind us, somewhere deeper in the woods, something shifted its weight. We didn't stay to see what shape it would choose next.